Hello dear friends and welcome to another art journal adventure. This is a long video and I'm using Dylusions paint, inks and stamps. Most of the supplies was gifted to me by my amazing friend Linda. The pages we are making today is a story taking us from 2021 into 2022. And because of that, I wanted a window from which we can watch the journey through. So I started my big Dylusions journal and I used my blade to cut a window in the first page. When I have my window, I bring out a sheet of acetate. I bought mine, but a piece of plastic packaging works just as well. I use distress collage medium to glue my acetate in place, and then I put a heavy Winnie the Pooh book from my kids over it to dry. In my last video, I showed you how to emboss cardstock and ink it up to look like wood. I had a lot of faux wood pieces left, and they were perfect to give my window a wood frame. I used the distress collage medium to glue the wood paper strips in place, and I alternate between using clips to hold them in place while the glue dries, and that Winnie the Pooh book. And I build the wood frame on both sides. When my frame is finished, it's time to stamp the images who will inhabit my art journal world. I start by stamping this cute toadstool house, and I stamp 2 houses, one for each year I intend to journey through. I also stamp the flowers from the same set, and you who know me know that you only see the tip of the image iceberg, and I stamp many flowers. I'm moving on to another stamp set, and I stamp the mushrooms and the lovely shapes in different patterns. And all the images are stamped in VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. Next, I need these gorgeous women with face masks that were released during lockdown in many countries. Finally, I stamp many flowers from this stamp set. So, back to my pages. I use my Dylusions journaling block. I trace the wavy edge of the block with a pencil, and then I bring out a blade to cut down the first page, so the second page peeks through behind it. The creator of Dylusions, Diane Revley, often make what's called a patchwork background, and I intend to make a version of that background on my first page, only using black shimmer paint, grey and white paint. Starting with grey and then moving on to black and white, I make rectangle patches of paint randomly on the page, and when I need an extra shade, I mix the black and grey to make a darker grey rectangle. And I love how the black shimmer paint gives this monochromatic background some glamour. I use a blending tool to apply the paint, and I will go in with a brush later to tidy up the patches and give them crisp edges. By the magic of video editing and a flat brush, the patches have become rectangles in different sizes. The next step is to stencil different patterns on different colored rectangles, still using the monochromatic color scheme. All these stencils are from Dylusions, starting with this water droplet pattern stenciled on the grey with black shimmer paint. And as I try to concentrate, my big head and hair interrupts your view. Next, I use grey paint and a star stencil to stencil the pattern on the white patches. And I must insist that a few mistakes here and there are of no consequence, to me at least, as I can use more paint and layers to hide them. Last but not least, I use a keyhole stencil and white paint on the black shimmer and patches, and you can see that one layer of white on black isn't opaque enough, but I will doodle this page and help the pattern stand out. I love doodling, and I start with a white gel pen and fill in a few keyholes on each black patch. After filling in every other keyhole, I start outlining the remaining keyholes. Next, I use a black fine liner to doodle around every grey star in a very imperfect way. Finally, I outline the black drops with that white gel pen. Before I call this background done, I bring out another stencil and a silver gel pen to give that dark grey patch a pattern, and I fill in the circles with little dots. Now let's make a couple of inky backgrounds. On the back side of the cut page I will use black marble, balmy nights, slate grey and ground coffee. And for the whole next page I will use my vanilla custard, squeezed orange, rose quartz and funky fuchsia, spraying first with water before the happy colors. And so I don't waste all that ink, I put a piece of cardstock over and save it for later. Next I spray the dark black, grey and brown inks, and I tilt the journal so they can spill over on the other page. While my background dries, I move on to color my images using both acrylic paint and inks. I start with the toadstool house, and for the top I use black shimmer paint diluted with water and work quick so the paint can move before it dries. For the door I use a water brush filled with ink in melted chocolate, and then I bring out ground coffee ink and put some in my little bowl so I can use a regular brush to add shadows. For the rest of the house I use slate grey paint diluted with water, and I use a tad of black shimmer paint to add shadows, and I use both paints and water to color in the dots on the roof and give them some shadow too. I use my ink-filled brushes with Pure Sunshine and Tangerine Dream to add light to the windows. Next I color flowers and mushrooms with inks in Balmy Nights, slate grey and ground coffee, and I put those inks in my bowls and use a regular brush. I also use black shimmer paint here and there. For the mushroom heads I use Balmy Nights and slate grey ink for the stems, blending the colors out with water. On these funny shapes, I used all my dark colors on the different patterns. With inks, I don't have to rush. They will move with water whenever I decide to blend them out. On these roses, I use ground coffee ink for the shadows, and I blend it out with a water brush filled with melted chocolate ink. For the stems, I added Balmy Nights on the left and blended it out with water over to the right. On this funky flower, I used black shimmer paint in the center and dragged the color out with water. Here you see a selection of black, grey and brown images. If you can believe it, I felt I needed a few more images and used this stamp set that is a favorite of mine, and I stamped in VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. Next I color these two images. I use slate grey ink for her hair and Balmy Nights for her face mask. Then I move over to the leaves and color the plain ones in Balmy Nights and the dotty ones with black shimmer paint, making them darker near the stem and lighter at the top of the leaves. Because few things are only dark, I decide to add my happy color scheme to her hat, using funky fuchsia for the center of the flowers, pure sunshine on the petals, and on that worm on her head I used cut grass. Finally, I color in the rest of her hat with Tangerine Dream. Next, I color a happy color house using shimmer paint in Postbox Red and Tangerine Dream for the roof, and I blend them together with water. I used shimmer paint in Pure Sunshine for the rest of the house, and I colored the door just like I did the last time. I used the same color combo of shimmer paint for these mushrooms. And for the coming flowers too. For this flower I used bubblegum pink and funky fuchsia shimmer paint, and for the roses I go back to Postbox Red, Tangerine Dream and Pure Sunshine. This flower is colored with crushed grapes, funky fuchsia and bubblegum pink, and I used all of the previous happy shimmer paints for the funky shapes coming next. I continue with shimmer paint, and on the plain leaves I used funky fuchsia and bubblegum pink, and on the dotted leaves I colored with crushed grapes and calypso tea. You can see that I already colored an outfit in happy colors, and now I color a dark outfit with inks in Balmy Nights, slate grey and ground coffee. Now let's get back to those inky backgrounds, and I want to add some stenciling. I have a stencil from Darkroom Door with creative words, and because creating is a constant for me, no matter how dark the world seems, I spray with white linen ink onto my dark background. Because the dark often spill over to the light, I spray my happy background with black ink through the same stencil. When the white ink doesn't show up like I want it, I put the stencil back in place and spray again. So, the story of these pages are, like you probably have figured out, the past year and the new year. The dark pages are 2021 spilling over to the lighter 2022. But I will also place some happy colors on the dark pages. There were happiness in 2021 after all. My first background is so busy I fear the house will disappear, so I glue the house on black cardstock and cut it out with a slim black border, and I glue the house and the mushrooms onto my page. I try using the dark leaf branches, but it is still too busy, so I stamp the branches again, cut them out and use them without coloring, just black and white. I put foam tape behind the lower hanging leaves and glue them hanging from the top of the page. I wrote 2021 in black on white cardstock and I glue it on a slightly bigger piece of black cardstock. I put foam tape behind it and glue it down. Moving on to my two other pages, I have all my images ready to go. I put foam tape behind the shapes only at the bottom of them and glue them down at the bottom of the pages, so I still have the option to tuck other images behind. I glue my dark leaf branches coming down from above. Next, I start gluing down mushrooms and flowers, tucking them behind the popped up shapes and gluing them in front as well. Finally, I glue down the dark lady with her happy color hat. Then I do the same procedure on my happy page, gluing the shapes popped up on foam tape and then the mushrooms and flowers. And while I glue, I want to tell you all how grateful I am for you, how creating makes me happy and your support even happier. If you have the time, I hope you will leave a comment about you. I glue down my happy lady and then I move on to making a tag that says 2022. I have a bubblegum pink shimmer spray as well as ink brushes with Pure Sunshine, Tangerine Dream and Funky Fuchsia. I brush them on the tag randomly and I use a brush for the shimmer spray as well as making splashes. When my tag is colored, I take what I trimmed off from the shapes at the bottom of the pages and I use them to frame the tag. Then I take my hand-drawn 2022 and glue it on my tag with foam tape. I add a couple of small mushrooms and then I put foam tape behind the tag itself and glue it on my page. Before I glue it down, I also put a black ribbon through the hole in the tag. Finally, I glue a few happy flowers and mushrooms on my dark pages. And now, this mixed media art journaling adventure has come to an end. Thank you so much for following me on this journey. Until the next time, happy crafting!